you.
And you're live. 3,
Hi.
2, 1, and go.
Hi, everyone, and happy Thanksgiving from Chocolate, Fluffy, and me on this night before Thanksgiving. I returned Monday from the AlienCon trip to Baltimore and Philadelphia, and I want to show you my new t-shirts as I put down the wonderful Fluffy and chocolate that seem to get bigger every day. And I wanted to do this for a reason, because it was 15 years ago that I had this idea for the mathematical generation of what entropy is what you're looking at on the back of my new t-shirt. And what it is all about, entropy, all these rivulets of energy come down and down and down. Entropy is the decline of energy, the decline of light, down to chaos, to war, to death, disease, hatred, zero, where there's nothing. That's at the bottom. And so, 15 years ago, I had this thought one night: down with entropy, up with light. And finally, 15 years later, comes this t-shirt, and the front of it is up with light. Linda fights for light. And because I had so much reaction at AlienCon that was so positive from people who got this, down with entropy, up with light, that it was kind of privately thrilling for me. Something that means a lot to me is down with entropy, up with light. I'll put it on the light side. And that at AlienCon, because so many people were interested in this concept and would stop and talk about it, that I began to feel like that I was in a group of friends and colleagues and people who got it, and wishing that the whole planet, all people, got it. Down with entropy, up with light. And so I want to extend my deep thanks to all of you who came to AlienCon in Baltimore, and the wonderful conversations we had at my book table and after the panels and after my artificial intelligence presentation and all. They were the kinds of discussions that you want to have with people at all levels and rarely do. And so to all of you who were there in Baltimore, thank you. And hopefully we are going to continue to have the people who were there at AlienCon now come to the Wednesday night Earthfiles YouTube channel as well, and keep expanding our dialogues about some of these concepts that some people might think were cerebral, but I think are vital to what we as humans can explore and talk about with each other, especially at this time in Earth's history, when humans are spreading out into our solar system and beyond to the interstellar frontiers that we're headed for. Right now, in the next few days, a 6-meter long spacecraft from Earth is speeding toward Mars for a very tricky landing next week on November 26, 2018. It's a NASA JPL machine called InSight. That's an acronym that stands for Interior Exploration Using Seismic Investigations, Geodesy, and Heat Transport. NASA wants to probe inside the Martian interior, and InSight will be moving at about 12,300 miles an hour when it begins its descent on November 26th to a flat Martian plain called Elysium Planitia. When InSight hits the top of the Martian atmosphere at 12,300 miles an hour, rapidly it has to slow down to 5 miles an hour, very, very quickly, in less than 7 minutes, before its 3 legs touch down on the Martian soil. If it doesn't, the entire spacecraft could break apart. Rob Grover, who is working in the InSight program, says, quote, "There's a reason engineers call landing on Mars 7 minutes of terror." And what he says is that we can't joystick the landing, so we have to rely on the commands we pre-program into the spacecraft. We've spent years testing our plans, learning from other Mars landings, and studying all of the conditions Mars can throw at us. And we're going to stay vigilant until InSight settles into its new home for the next several months in the Elysium Planitia region, close quote. Well, NASA reports that during the InSight lander's descent, its heat shield will be pointed downward, and that's to protect the spacecraft's sensitive instruments from temperatures that will peak at 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit. The atmosphere slows the lander to less than 1,000 miles an hour, and when the vehicle reaches about 7 miles above the surface of Elysium Planitia, the lander will deploy a supersonic parachute to slow even further. The heat shield eventually drops away, and when the lander reaches a mile high, it drops away from the back shell with the parachute and ignites its onboard thrusters. These engines maneuver the lander to a safe spot and lower the spacecraft gently down to the ground. At least that is the prayer of NASA JPL in Pasadena and in other control rooms that will be watching intently on November 26th. If all goes well in this landing, engineers will then spend the next 2 or 3 months deploying InSight's instruments. And they do this by an arm. It's a big arm that comes up out of the lander, and they have 2 main tools that they want to get out onto the Martian surface. They have a seismometer that they want to listen for Mars quakes, and a self-hammering nail that will come out of the lander and dive straight down 16 feet underground to take the planet's temperature. This is the first time in all of these years that we have been trying to study Mars that we will have anything going down into Mars. Now, if the seismometer is too close to the InSight lander, even the tiny vibrations on the lander, even a little bit of wind, could make the data from the seismometer not be what they need. And so they're going to spend a few weeks trying to get, using InSight's cameras on the lander, very careful placement out far where the arm will put down a seismometer and then the craft will back up. And Elizabeth Barrett, she is a science system engineer at NASA JPL, and she says, quote, "If you've ever played those claw games at carnivals where there's a glass thing filled with little presents, and you have to move something like a knob on the outside to get the claw to go down to what you want," she said, that's sort of what it's going to be like on the InSight lander, that they're going to have to perfectly line up with this outside control of computer signals that will be going into the lander, hoping that they can get everything set up before they turn them on in hopefully the right places. Now, the InSight mission won't be looking for life, but in July 2020, NASA will put another lander in the Jezero crater on Mars, specifically to look for signs of ancient or even current microbes from 3.5 billion years ago when Mars had a warmer, wetter climate. There was a time when Earth and Mars were so similar, Both were warm, wet, and shrouded with an atmosphere. But 3 to 4 billion years ago, the two planets took very different paths. Bruce Bernard, he's the principal investigator at InSight's NASA Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena. He said, quote, Earth and Mars were molded out of very similar stuff. So why did the finished planets turn out so differently? Close quote. After the InSight mission, with some of the abilities to measure the inside of Mars and take temperature, we might begin to have more pieces of the puzzle about the dry, cold Mars and the wet, warm Earth that once upon a time were almost like twin planets. Now, 3 weeks ago, on Halloween night, October 31st, that was my last live Earthfiles YouTube channel broadcast, because after that, Lori and Michael and I packed for that trip to Alien Con in Baltimore, and then I went to Philadelphia to celebrate early Thanksgiving and Christmas with my daughter Laura, her husband John, and my 4-year-old granddaughter Hannah. Where we all left off at the YouTube channel broadcast on Halloween night was my sharing an experience with a dark, seemingly evil Hulk in a night in Boston, Massachusetts back in 1974, and the protection of a huge blazing white cross, while a thought voice told me to say the Lord's Prayer over and over until the black Hulk disappeared in a wonderful, warm, kind of like a breeze. Now, I asked back on Halloween night if any of you in the YouTube channel audience had had any similar experiences. And I also asked how many people have been having vivid dreams about apocalyptic scenes, such as flooding waters, belching volcanoes, and earthquakes, which many people in the human abduction syndrome have been calling me about this past year. And I was very curious about whether or not the general civilian audience might also be having similar dreams, perhaps anticipating something in the timeline to come. So tonight, as my Fluffy and Chocolate are knocking over trash barrels, I want to share a few of the many emails that I received, beginning with a professional aerospace photographer who is now 59 years old and lives in Central California. She writes, quote, I had a dream regarding a giant tidal wave hitting and wiping out the entire East Coast, and it was the first of several repeating very vivid lucid dreams. I had them beginning in 2012 to 2014, and then they began again in early 2018. I have never kept a diary, so I'm remembering these as best I can. I was standing in my backyard, just looking out onto my property. I own 3 acres, and suddenly there was a screen, like I was being shown some sort of a hologram, only without sound, but running like a movie. It lasted maybe 5 minutes, and it was somewhat translucent and projected a few feet from where I was standing. I could recognize that what I was seeing was the East Coast, not the California coast. And it was being destroyed by a huge tidal wave that came out of nowhere suddenly and wiped out everything in a matter of moments. I could see the waters receding and there was nothing left, just wiped clean to a blank slate. It was shocking and disturbing, and I somehow knew that this would be taking place in the near future, in my lifetime, at now 59, and I would be alive to see this happen. I don't know what to call this experience. I wasn't dreaming because I know I was awake, and yet I felt like I was having some kind of holographic projection dream. The cause of this wave, I got the feeling, was from the earth getting hit with a jolt of some kind, but not like an earthquake. It was maybe like the earth got shoved by something, and all the East Coast, all the way down to Florida, was hit with a large wave of water. I had a second one of these experiences where I was a passenger riding in my sister's car when, as I was looking out the window at what were healthy fields of corn, they were morphing in and out, back and forth, between dead, dried up, and brown to vibrant, healthy green, back and forth, back and forth. I remember rubbing my eyes, blinking, because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then, again, like the first one, there was sort of a short movie clip in my mind, sort of like projected, the holographic effect. And I never said a word to my sister, who was sitting right next to me. And yet, a half hour later, after this strange sort of devastation, vibrant green, devastation, vibrant green, she told me that she had seen the Virgin Mary standing in a field of corn that we had passed by. Now, the last experience that I had was early this year of 2018. I was sitting at my kitchen table looking out a large window in my breakfast nook that looks out toward the back of my property. Again, this was like a movie holographic screen. I was shown a large city that was being plummeted with large chunks of burning metal. I could hear the sound as they flew by of a sizzling, crackling electrical buzz. Everyone was caught off guard and never saw it coming. This was a normal, busy day with lots of people on the streets, and they were all in shock as they witnessed what was happening. The experience had sound and was so real I could taste the burning metal in my mouth. And yet I was safe and just an observer. It also appeared that the ground was shaking like an earthquake, and it was windy. I feel that we are living in some amazing time. I have a feeling that I cannot shake, that something big is coming down the pike, and that our world is going to change dramatically. I get the feeling that a healing needs to take place before it is too late for Mother Earth. Now, also from October 31st, that Halloween night, I received this email. I just finished watching your October 31st Earthfiles on YouTube. And Linda, I have never told anyone about my experience either, and it's hard to do so now even to you. When I was about 16 years old, it was around the year 1974, I would be falling asleep and suddenly experience sleep paralysis. I would hear my name being called telepathically. I could see a black mass on the ceiling of my bedroom. I think of it as a spider-looking thing. That may not be accurate. I can't tell you the size, but it was large. Although I did not come from a religious family, I automatically began to recite the Lord's Prayer in my head, as you described on your YouTube channel. I don't know why I thought to do that. The paralysis would stop and I would go to sleep, and this happened several times over a period of months. I started wearing a cross and reciting the Lord's Prayer at bedtime every night. I have been an abduction experiencer since I was a child, so I attributed this to the beings with whom I had interacted, although it was completely different from my experiences with them. Now I occasionally dream that I just see a pair of eyes staring out from a dark face. I stare back again, saying the Lord's Prayer. I can feel a sort of tug from the eyes, but it goes away when I start the Lord's Prayer. Here is an email from a woman from a small town in northern Alberta, Canada. Thank you so much for sharing your personal experience on your October 31st Earthfiles YouTube. Upon hearing what you went through, I immediately started to cry. It was good to know that I was not alone and not crazy. I have had similar experiences many years ago, and I never told anyone for fear of ridicule and disbelief. Sadly, science has conveniently explained sleep paralysis and in some ways undermined and devalued the experiences that I've had over the years until I heard you. I've worked in healthcare as a nurse for over 31 years. Logic and facts have always been at the forefront for me. However, I'll admit my gut instincts and intuition are equally important, but I've kept them private. I've never shared these with anyone, Linda, until now. I've had a few experiences over the years with sleep paralysis, and eventually I heard a voice in my mind about focusing on moving and wiggling my toe to free me from the paralysis like you did with your little finger, and a thought voice telling me to say the Lord's Prayer. Once I did this, I felt liberated and convinced there were good and dark energies at play around me. Without going into a lot of detail about my experiences, I just wanted to say to you that you are not alone and to thank you for validating my experiences. Down with entropy, up with light, she finishes her email. And the last one in the sequence that I've just pulled from several dozen about these apocalyptic experiences that people are having in either waking holographic visions, vivid dreams, telepathic communication. This is from a woman who says that she lives on Fidalgo Island in the San Juans north of Seattle, Washington. She says, for background on me, I am an abductee since early childhood, but I have never spoken to anyone about this until now, Linda. In the past, I have had dreams about major future catastrophic events that came to pass. One of them was the attack on 9/11 of the World Trade Center. I am writing to you about your inquiry to listeners about possible coming events, and if anyone else has had vivid dreams about water events. I have had very real dreams, but they are coming from firestorms and volcanic eruptions. I have had these types of dreams beginning only in the past 2 years. I find myself fleeing and seeing the misery of others while this is happening. I have been asked after I wake up by a thought voice, do I choose to leave Earth during this troubled time? I can only explain it as telepathy. When it comes out of nowhere, it feels like an entire conversation has happened. And my answer always is, I choose to stay to help those who are confused. So I am sharing a little bit from people who have been having these apocalyptic senses. And if any of you tonight have had your own vivid dreams or holographic projections or some altered state in which you have felt that you are seeing something that is impending, I really would appreciate your emailing me to my email, earthfiles@earthfiles.com. Think of a reporter who files news about the Earth. That's why I call it Earthfiles, and the email is earthfiles@earthfiles.com. Now, I have many other letters in the categories of the out-of-body experiences that we have all been sharing and talking about. The smoky fog that appeared twice in my office and has not since. But I have received many, many fascinating emails from people also saying they have never talked with anyone about their out of body or seeing the fog of a loved one who had passed on, and they became convinced that that person came back in this smoky, foggy condition. And so tonight, as we are almost ending 2018, which has been a tumultuous political year, maybe as we move into 2019, maybe people are getting some of these apocalyptic vision dreams or holographic visions or meditations, because maybe 2019 is going to be a year of a lot of physical tumult on our planet. And perhaps the physical tumult is going to yet provoke more political chaos. Either way, whatever is coming in 2019, everybody I know, no matter what their profession, no matter what their background, everyone feels that something huge is going to emerge out of 2019. We're only weeks away from New Year's Day. So for those of you who are comfortable in sending me emails about anything that you are perceiving, meditating, dreaming, telepathy with other beings, if you're in the abduction experiencer, please keep sending me your emails. It may be that a lot of you are sort of like a seismometer, that you are vibrating because there are big events to come. And I think it's valuable. In fact, it may be that if we talk more about some of this, that maybe it loosens the pressure in the timeline. Maybe those of us that are coming together and we can talk with each other about these kinds of events, maybe it's like a steam valve releasing some pressure and might have an impact on the timeline that we're now moving on. Time, space, other dimensions. Manipulating all of them. Those are the subjects that I personally think we're going to see more and more about as we move into this new year. So, join me, join all of the audience out there in the Earthfiles YouTube channel for more about these provocative subjects and the constant change now. It's so rapid of scientific, medical, and environmental breakthroughs that I think every Wednesday night from here to the end of 2019, that it will always have some kind of an exciting science update in addition to the subjects that you bring to me and I bring to you in questions that we can continue our Earthfiles YouTube channel dialogue. I love reading the insights of this audience that is coming, as so many people say, for the first time. And so, a handshake from me to you and from Fluffy and Chocolate, and getting into Thanksgiving in the United States tomorrow, followed by Christmas around a lot of the world 3 or 4 weeks later, and then New Year's Day 2019. We will keep coming as often as we can through these holidays with continuing Wednesday nights. And with that, Lori and Michael, and with thanks to you for all of your hard work on getting the t-shirts out to the people who came and loved them at Alien Con and that are coming to the Earthfiles shop and are getting it down with Entropy, up with light, and orders keep coming. Thank you for all of your hard work and getting these to people for these holidays. I hope everyone will go to the Earthfiles shop and check out our t-shirts. And with that, Lori, what about questions tonight from our audience?
Absolutely, but now I have to put the link out to the store, Linda. Hold on.
Okay.
There you go, everybody. Okay. So here is our first question for tonight. Do you know what type of videos will be released from DeLong and the government?
Well, I know that one of their priorities is what Tom DeLong calls the ATOM project, an acronym that has to do with the analysis of materials that are exotic, allegedly from either crash sites or even the Rendlesham Forest, where John Burroughs, who I co-host Phenomenon Radio with every week, was engulfed in light twice between December 26th to 28th, 1980. And I understand that Hal Puthoff and Louis Elizondo and Steve Justice and the group that has organized To the Stars with Tom DeLong, that they have perhaps some material even from that event. They have the bismuth, magnesium, zinc layered metal that I have hand delivered to them, and that it is an issue now of what kinds of tests can they do on materials that might be so exotic that X-ray crystallography, X-ray fluoroscopy might be needed to see if there are intelligent, what's called manipulation at the atomic level inside of these materials. And then, if there is a confirmation of something like intelligent placement of atoms in highly intelligently structured metals, would we, in human civilization today, at the end of 2018, would there be any human scientists, human labs, human companies that could duplicate what the exotic materials are and how they are made? If not, that would reinforce the testimony like the bismuth, magnesium, zinc that I have tried for 22 years to get to the bottom of, and it is as mysterious, perhaps even more mysterious today than it was when Art Bell and I first received this metal, which, as far as I know, is the only, those 6 pieces that we got when we were doing Coast and Dreamland together in April and May of 1996. Those are the only 6 pieces of the layered bismuth, magnesium, zinc that has ever existed in the world, except for a physicist that I interviewed, a whistleblower, never seen public, who told me 2.5 years ago that he had worked underground at Area 51 in a 4th level of a highly, highly secure, classified underground series of laboratories at Area 51, and that one of his projects was to study a piece of the bismuth, magnesium, zinc nano-layered material that was 6 feet long by 3 feet wide. Huge. And that physicist told me 2.5 years ago that his understanding from the work that he did underground at Area 51 in the early 1970s was that it was a skin that was on the outer side of wedge-shaped vehicles that came down in the Roswell and Magdalena and Alamogordo area back in the late 1940s, and that he had also handled and understood that on the inside of the craft, paralleling, was a pure aluminum skin that did have intelligent placement of monoiridium atoms in the aluminum, and that the 2 skins operating together in the craft would neutralize gravity, take gravity away. Now, if it were possible for the To the Stars group to confirm that information, that would be a big step. And are there scientists, are there labs, are there corporations, are they even able in the black programs? We know there's a black technology program and a white technology program. We live in the white world. The scientists that have been working on extraterrestrial interactions with this planet for the last 70 years, they're in the black world. There's probably lots and lots of huge developments and breakthroughs in the black world that we in the white world know nothing about yet. And that's where To the Stars could serve on some of these exotic, possibly exotic materials. They could serve as a transition point from the black world to the white world. But here is another caveat. If we are dealing with truly advanced materials, even the bismuth, magnesium, zinc, if these materials were designed to work in frequencies that the non-humans know how to work with, know how to build at the nano layer, know how to build at the atomic layer, to interact with certain frequencies like specifically high terahertz frequencies. It may be that on Earth currently, at least in the white world, we don't have any way to make the generators of those frequencies. So we could have all the study in the world of physical materials, but we might lack the know-how of how to interact those materials with certain frequencies that the non-humans built their machinery around. So there's a lot to look forward to if all of this testing can keep going forward and be publicly reported. I will do as much as I possibly can in reporting what I learn. But what we don't know is as we move into 2019 and then to 2020, when we're supposed to have the first life search lander go to Mars to arrive at either the end of 2020 or in 2021, it will be our first exploration that's public of looking for life on Mars, for example. And it shows that whatever advancements the black and the white worlds have made in technology, we are still making baby steps into the solar system, while advanced intelligences that appear to have been interacting with our planet for thousands, millions of years, they would be far beyond what we are able to do. That's going to be the very interesting margin right now going forward about what it can be known, what can be tested, what can be reported, and how much defies understanding, and how much that defies understanding cannot be reported. I will always keep trying to share as best as I can the information that I feel that I have some whistleblower strength behind, some scientific support for, even if the scientists cannot speak publicly. I will always keep trying to share with you what I learn doing some of my own independent investigations, as I have been doing with the bismuth, magnesium, zinc for the last 22 years. And those photographs, by the way, of the bismuth, magnesium, zinc that have been shown in George Knapp's article and in To the Stars of the bismuth, magnesium, zinc is a photograph that I took back in 1999 when I was asked to do a presentation at the Franklin Mint in Philadelphia, and worked with a photographer where we had a very crisp, beautiful lens and that tight close-up of all of those layers of bismuth, magnesium, zinc that everybody uses is the photograph I took at the Franklin Mint for my presentation back in 1999. So it isn't a photograph that came from a science lab, and it's not a photograph from any of the people doing any of the efforts to do work now or investigations. It's a photograph that I took with a good friend of mine, Tim Bauer, who had access to this beautiful camera at that time. And that's how we got the beautiful crisp, you can see all the layers really tight on a piece of the bismuth, magnesium, zinc. So for anybody listening who themselves may have knowledge about Area 51, China Lake, Wright-Patterson, there's a lot of labs that you out there may have some firsthand information about the bismuth, magnesium, zinc, nano-layered metal. Please get in touch with me. You can email me, and if you have really good, significant firsthand information, we can always communicate by FedEx, Federal Express. So with that, Lori, let's try another question.
You got it. So our next question is, are you aware of the claims of direct energy weapons being used in the California fires? What are your thoughts?
No. I have no firsthand or secondhand information. The loss of so many people over square miles, thinking about them, it makes me want to cry, to tell you the truth, that the devastation is so huge and so complete for so many of our human family, that the idea that anybody would use anything in directed energy weapons, in experimentation or whatever that could have caused those fires, and that's incomprehensible to me. I think my mind goes tilt because I can't think that there could be that much evil from humans to humans. So I guess I don't even want to consider it. But if anybody had any proof, I'm curious to you in the audience. What do you think the punishment should be for any military or political or human group that would use directed energy weapons that would cause the horrible devastation that our fellow Americans in California have experienced? It's beyond my ability to even go there. Let's try another question.
You got it. Our next question. NASA is planning to have a permanent station on the moon by 2025. Could that be leading to some type of disclosure?
Oh, I hope we have disclosure or telling the truth that we're not alone in the universe way before 2025. I'm just really expecting that we're going to get at least that headline. So much is on the docket for 2019, 2020, 2021, just getting the life-searching instruments to Mars. That's going to be a big deal. And I suspect, this is a speculation, but I suspect that our government in the black world already knows about ancient archaeology on Mars. I have been told that by people who have worked in special operations, who have seen photographs of ancient archaeology in the Cydonia region in the northern hemisphere of Mars. And they say that the archaeology and the hieroglyphs there that we have photographed from the orbiters and maybe from rovers of some sort, that there could be something on Mars that we don't even know about, that match the backside of the moon archaeology, the interior of the moon. Several people have described to me that they have seen either photographs, footage of archaeology on the backside of the moon that is involved with an alien presence that is always on the moon, always inside of the moon, and has been long before Homo sapiens sapiens stood up. And then when you take that, when you say, okay, our government knows there's an alien presence on the moon that matches the archaeology of an alien presence on parts of Mars, that now allegedly, I am told, match ancient archaeology 2 miles under ice in Antarctica. We're talking about ancient planetary visiting civilization or civilizations that so far precede the 2 million-year-old Homo erectus standing up in Africa, that we're talking about planetary, interstellar civilizations in the Milky Way and from beyond that have been through this solar system, have been on planets, have left residues of an alien presence, and that our government knows this, and the Russian government knows this, and the Chinese government knows this. The big question to me is why? Why? Do they continue to hang on to the lie and the policy of denial that we're alone in the universe? It's absolutely preposterous. So hopefully, as I've told you guys with a laugh, I've had a couple of dinner bets that we would get the "We're Not Alone in the Universe" headline by New Year's Day 2019. Who knows? It may still happen. But I really think that we're going to have some kind of confirmation, at least, in 2019 and no later than 2020. So hopefully in our dialogues here, we will continue to keep unfolding whatever it is that I can learn from whistleblowers, from those of you who may have firsthand knowledge and can reach me and other whistleblowers. We need the help. We all need the help from legitimate, credible whistleblowers about what is really happening, and I'll keep trying to report that. So what about one more question?
Okay, Linda, so you can decide to pass on this one if you want, but for weeks now, people in your chat have been asking you to comment on the situation with the divide in the UFO community between those on seemingly one side of the fence, the types like David Wilcock and Emery Smith and Corey Good, who have unverifiable claims, and then researchers on the other side. It's been so active, and people ask all the time, and we don't ask, but we were kind of overwhelmed with them tonight, so I wanted to know if you would talk about it.
Here's my problem. I've been trying to stay within the boundaries, and I came back with a cold from my granddaughter. My problem is since I graduated from Stanford University with a master's degree in communication, produced, wrote, direct, edited, got the funding for the documentaries that I was doing at Stanford, and then went right into news in Los Angeles at KNBC, a street reporter, and then a producer of science and environmental and medical programming in Los Angeles and Boston, in Denver, director of special projects, where I crossed over into the whole issue of an alien intelligence interacting with our planet in the 90-minute special that I did for the CBS station there called A Strange Harvest, about animal mutilations, and law enforcement telling me the perpetrators were creatures from outer space, ranchers telling me with their own eyes that they saw beams of light come down into a pasture, saw an animal either lowered into the pasture or rise up out of the pasture, and then when they had the courage to come out in the daylight, it would be a bloodless, totally dry, ground dry, in most cases cattle mutilations of in most of the ranchers at that time, but included horses, goats, sheep, pigs, rabbits, wild game, deer, elk, reindeer. So I came into this whole phenomenon subject through the hard, slugging, not comfortable, very difficult work of getting up every day to go deal as best I could with finding out hard facts about each of these mutilated bodies. And the very fact that law enforcement was saying the creatures were from outer space set me on a path, a very difficult one. It has been as hard a path as I could imagine anything could ever be, to this day of November 21st, 2018. And that I have covered, it seems like, hundreds of facets of this phenomena, and I've always been trying to apply the same rules that I always used at Stanford and in TV stations and working on projects, whether it was for UNICEF or whether it was for HBO or CNN, where my whole pressure, my whole goal is to get facts that can be proved. Proven facts in this, we'll call it the phenomena, are very difficult to come by. And I'm always struggling, and I always try to say, here's facts, here's proof. The whistleblowers that I'm working with have provided me their DD-214s, their certificates of honorable discharge, photographs of them working in various projects. I have a number of cases like this, one of which I will be unfolding that will be very interesting to you all and the Coast audience on November 29th. Be sure to look for my Earthfiles reports. It's going to be amazing. But I'm always trying to use the same rules. Find facts that can be corroborated by documents, multiple eyewitnesses, firsthand testimony, photographs, and any kind of evidence that will back it up. That's the first goal. When it comes to the issue of the people that I'm being asked about, to this day, I've not seen proven facts. It is in speculation, first or second or third hand testimony, except for where people have said it was their first hand testimony, but I haven't seen hard proof. I have not seen hard proof of an autopsied alien body. I've not seen hard proof of photographs, documents, anything from Mars. Or even the moon, outside of the images that have been released by people who have investigated, like Van Flanderen and others, who have said, here is what appears to be structures on the moon. And that has been from telescopic observations or studying Apollo mission photos. And to me, that's in a different category from some of the statements that you're asking me about. So I'm just trying to walk my path with the hardest rules that I can apply in impossibly difficult subjects to prove, without being a commentator on or a participant in others' work. It may be that in the end, that all of these different facets will be found to be true. So I hope that you will understand I am trying to do the most credible work that I can in the most incredible subjects that a journalist could ever face. And with that, Lori, I'm going to say to everyone in the United States, happy Thanksgiving. And to everyone else around the world, I hope that we all are going to keep going forward together, growing our audiences on Wednesday nights and Earthfiles with Down with Entropy, Up with Light, and move forward as positively as we possibly can in a planet that seems agitated and political factions that seem in chaos. I love you guys.